If you're over 60, there's something you need to know because it could affect your brain while you sleep. One simple fruit, something you've likely enjoyed for decades without a second thought, might now be quietly increasing your risk of stroke. No pain, no signal, just a sudden loss of balance, speech, or strength that arrives overnight. As a neurologist, I've seen this unfold far too often. Not from fast food or obvious triggers, but from everyday fruit. The truth is, after 60, your body's ability to handle sugars, acids, and potassium begins to change. The kidneys, liver, and blood vessels become more sensitive. Medications, slower circulation, and even mild dehydration can turn that harmless-looking fruit into a risk you never saw coming. That's why today, we're going to explore 6 common fruits that could be quietly harming your brain and circulation, especially if eaten at the wrong time. The list may surprise you. Before we devein, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. 1. Bananas. They're soft, sweet, and comforting. A fruit many of us have enjoyed since childhood. Sliced into cereal, blended into smoothies, or eaten on their own. Bananas have long been seen as a safe and nourishing snack. But as we grow older, especially past the age of 60, our relationship with this familiar fruit may need to change, particularly when it comes to very ripe bananas. As bananas ripen, their natural starches convert into simple sugars. That's why the riper they get, the sweeter they taste. But while that extra sweetness may seem harmless, the way your aging body processes, it can be very different. An overripe banana has a much higher glycemic index than a firm green one. That means it sends a rush of sugar into your bloodstream much more quickly, spiking blood sugar, pressuring the kidneys, and forcing the body to work harder than it should, especially first thing in the morning. And it's not just about sugar. Bananas are high in potassium, which is normally a good thing. But in seniors, when the kidneys aren't filtering as efficiently and the blood vessels become stiffer, high potassium levels can become risky, contributing to sudden shifts in heart rhythm or blood pressure. I once had a patient, Linda, a 75-year-old retired school principal from Michigan. She had always believed bananas were a smart, heart-healthy choice. Most mornings, she would have 1 or 2 ripe bananas sometimes in her oatmeal, other times just blended with a bit of yogurt. It was part of her routine, something she'd done for decades without issue. But one morning, she woke up feeling unusually groggy. Her husband noticed her words were slurred, and her left hand felt weak. They rushed to the hospital. Doctors found her blood pressure had surged overnight, and her potassium levels were above the normal range. She had experienced a small ischemic stroke. The team explained that it wasn't one banana that caused the issue, but rather a buildup of subtle risks: dehydration, age-related kidney changes, her medication load, and the consistent intake of high sugar, high potassium fruit on an empty stomach. After that, Linda made a few thoughtful changes. She started her mornings with a glass of water and a small protein-rich breakfast, If she had a banana, she chose a firmer, less ripe one, and never more than half at a time. Within weeks, her energy improved, her blood pressure became more stable, and the sluggish, shaky mornings became less frequent. This doesn't mean bananas are bad. They're still a wholesome fruit with plenty of benefits. But for older adults, the timing, ripeness, and portion size matter more than ever. An overripe banana eaten first thing in the morning, especially without hydration or protein, can become a hidden burden to an already sensitive system. And bananas are just the beginning. Up next is another fruit that seems small and innocent, but carries an even higher sugar punch in every handful. Let's take a closer look at grapes. 2. Grapes. They're small, bright, and seem so harmless. Sweet little bites we've shared with our grandkids, tossed into summer salads, or served with sandwiches as a healthy snack. But for those of us over 60, grapes may carry more risk than we realize, especially when eaten in the wrong way or at the wrong time. Grapes, especially the seedless, ultra-sweet varieties you find at most grocery stores, are concentrated sugar in a small package. One handful may not seem like much, but inside each grape is a rapid dose of glucose and fructose for younger bodies. This might not pose much trouble, but as we age, our insulin response slows. Our blood vessels become more fragile, and our brain and heart don't recover from sugar spikes as quickly as they used to. That sudden influx of sugar, particularly if eaten on an empty stomach or late in the evening, can quietly begin to do damage inside the walls of your arteries, especially the delicate ones. In the brain, sugar inflames. That inflammation doesn't announce itself with pain, doesn't give you a fever or a rash. It's quiet, slow, but with every spike, your body attempts to respond by forming tiny clots, repairing the damage as best it can. Over time, those microclots and small repairs can become a hidden threat. This was the case with Judith, a 9-year-old retired piano teacher from Vermont. Her days were full of music, reading, and caring for her garden. She wasn't diabetic. She ate clean, exercised gently, and kept to a predictable rhythm each morning around sane. And she'd sit by the window with a cup of tea and a bowl of grapes, green or red. It didn't matter. She loved the sweetness, the ease, but over time, she began to notice small changes. Her hand shook slightly when she wrote. Her thoughts took longer to form. One morning, as she was addressing a card for her sister's birthday, she froze mid-sentence. Her mind went blank, her speech stumbled, and her daughter quickly took her to the hospital. Doctors found she had experienced a transient ischemic attack, a mini stroke. Her blood sugar had surged. Tests revealed elevated inflammatory markers and signs of insulin resistance she had never been told about. Judith had done everything right, or so she thought, but even the healthiest foods can become harmful if not matched to the changing needs of an aging body. After that, Judith made a few adjustments. She still enjoyed grapes, but in small amounts, no longer a bowl. Just a few, with a handful of raw walnuts or a slice of goat cheese. She avoided them entirely in the evening. And with those changes, her focus sharpened, her energy became steadier. She regained trust in her body. one day at a time. So, the lesson here isn't to fear fruit. It's to understand it, to respect how age changes the way our bodies handle even the most familiar things. If you enjoy grapes, do so with care. Pair them with fat or protein to slow absorption. Avoid them first thing in the morning or just before bed. And speak to your doctor if you're managing blood sugar or blood pressure, because these small shifts, though easy to overlook, matter more with each passing year. And if grapes raised an eyebrow, just wait. Because next, we're heading somewhere tropical. A fruit that tastes like sunshine but could quietly be stirring up trouble in your brain while you sleep. Let's take a closer look at pineapple. 3. Pineapples. For older adults, especially those managing circulation problems or taking blood-thinning medications, pineapple may seem like a healthy treat, but it can quietly become a risky trigger for stroke. Not because it's processed or artificial, but because of how it interacts with the aging body. Pineapple contains an enzyme called bromelain. In small amounts, it can support digestion by helping break down proteins. But when consumed regularly, in large portions, or alongside medications that thin the blood, bromelain can tip the balance too far. It interferes with platelet function and the body's ability to clot properly. And for someone already taking aspirin, warfarin, or other anticoagulants, that disruption can increase the risk of internal bleeding in the brain. That's particularly dangerous. Hemorrhagic strokes, the kind caused by bleeding rather than clots, are harder to detect early and far more difficult to recover from. But the concern doesn't end there. Pineapple is also high in sugar and has a high glycemic index. This means it sends sugar rushing into the bloodstream almost immediately after you eat it. For older adults whose metabolism slows at night, especially after dinner, that sugar isn't burned off, it lingers. And while you sleep, it puts pressure on your blood vessels, especially those feeding the brain. On top of that, pineapple is one of the most acidic fruits on the shelf. Even if it doesn't cause heartburn, it can quietly trigger nighttime reflux. That acid may creep up into your throat while you sleep. Especially if you lie down too soon after eating, you may not even notice it. But research shows that when stomach acid enters the airways during sleep, it can cause tiny drops in oxygen levels. That reduction in oxygen, silent and sustained, has been linked to early morning strokes and memory problems later in life. This was exactly the case for Harold, a 7-8-year-old retired conductor from Oregon. Every evening after dinner, he'd treat himself to a bowl of fresh pineapple. It was his way of avoiding desserts and staying healthy, but over time, he began waking up groggy, feeling foggy-headed and off balance. One morning, he collapsed while trying to make coffee at the hospital. He was diagnosed with a small stroke near the cerebellum, the part of the brain responsible for coordination. His labs showed elevated blood sugar, reduced platelet activity, and signs of nighttime oxygen dips from undiagnosed acid reflux. It wasn't any one thing that caused it. It was the combination sugar, acid, and bromelain all delivered in what he thought was a safe, natural choice. After that, Harold made a simple change. He moved his fruit intake to the afternoon. He began pairing pineapple with a handful of walnuts to blunt the sugar spike. He cut down on the portion size and avoided eating it. Within 2 hours of lying down, his mornings improved. The dizziness faded. his confidence returned. So here's the gentle lesson. Pineapple isn't bad, but when eaten in large amounts, especially late at night, and especially for seniors on medications, it can quietly stress the body in ways that aren't immediately obvious. Timing matters. Quantity matters. And your body's changing needs matter even more. If you've always considered pineapple a safe choice, that's understandable. But now you know your body's relationship with food changes with age, and the smallest habits can add up. And speaking of misunderstood fruits, next we'll turn our attention to one that's praised for hydration, but may be doing just the opposite in older adults. Let's take a closer look at watermelon. 4. Watermelon. It's crisp, cool, and delicious. The summer favorite we all know and love, watermelon feels like nature's perfect refreshment. Light on the stomach, packed with water, and easy to eat, especially when the heat rolls in. But for older adults, watermelon can carry a hidden risk that's often overlooked. You see, while watermelon is made up of about 90% water, it behaves like a natural diuretic once inside the body. That means it encourages your system to flush out fluid through urination. For most people, that's not a concern. But if you're over 60, and especially if you're taking diuretics or blood pressure medications, it can quietly push your body into dehydration without you realizing it. The issue becomes even more serious when watermelon is eaten late in the day or in large portions at night. Our bodies naturally conserve fluid. Blood pressure drops, and the heart works more gently. But if you've had a big helping of watermelon after dinner, the excess fluid loss can throw things off balance. Your blood begins to thicken, moving slower through your veins. That thicker blood increases the chance of clot formation, especially in older arteries that may already be narrowed or fragile. And in those quiet overnight hours, with lower hydration and slowed circulation, conditions become just right for a clot to form and travel. That's what happened to Samuel Rivera, an 83-year-old retired math teacher from New Mexico. Every evening during the summer, he'd wind down with 2 large slices of chilled watermelon. It became a comforting habit. He liked the sweetness, the hydration, and the feeling that he was doing something good for his body. What he didn't realize was that his water pill taken earlier that day for high blood pressure, combined with the watermelon, was draining too much fluid from his system. One morning, he felt weak when he stood up, his vision blurred, and his balance was off. By the time he sat back down, the damage was already happening. At the hospital, tests confirmed mild dehydration, thickened blood, and a small ischemic stroke in the left hemisphere of his brain. Samuel was shocked. He hadn't been eating fried food or sugar. He hadn't missed his walks. But the watermelon, the fruit he trusted for hydration, had actually made him more vulnerable. It wasn't the fruit itself, it was the timing, the portion, and how it interacted with his medications and his aging body. After his recovery, Samuel made a few gentle changes. He started enjoying watermelon at lunch instead of after dinner. He paired it with a small handful of lightly salted almonds or a glass of electrolyte water to help with fluid retention. And most importantly, he paid closer attention to signs of dehydration, morning headaches, dry mouth, or lightheadedness, treating them as early warnings rather than minor annoyances, watermelon can still be part of a healthy summer routine, but only when eaten mindfully. For older adults, the safest approach is moderation, timing, and understanding your medications. If you're on diuretics, make sure your doctor knows how often you're eating high-water fruits, and always hydrate intentionally with both water and electrolytes throughout the day. Now, as surprising as watermelon may be, there's another fruit that raises even more questions because of its long-standing reputation as a health food. Oranges have been praised for decades as a source of vitamin C and heart support, but what many don't realize is that this citrus staple can quietly interact with common medications and pose serious risks. Let's take a closer look. 5. Oranges. Next on the list is one of the most familiar fruits in American households. A bright glass of orange juice on the breakfast table, a peeled orange packed into a grandchild's lunchbox, even a few tucked into a holiday basket with care. Oranges have long carried a reputation for health, but for older adults, especially those on medication, they may be quietly causing more harm than good. It's not just the sugar in orange juice, although 1 cup can send your blood sugar soaring faster than many people expect. The deeper concern lies in a group of natural compounds found in many citrus fruits. One of these compounds is called furanocoumarin. It doesn't change the flavor. You won't taste it or see it. But once inside the body, it interferes with the liver's enzyme system, specifically the enzymes that are responsible for breaking down a wide variety of prescription medications. When those enzymes are blocked, medications stay in your system longer than they should. For someone over 60, this change in metabolism can become dangerous quickly. A heart medication that used to work perfectly might suddenly lower your blood pressure too far. A statin meant to manage cholesterol could start building up in your tissues, leading to leg pain, muscle weakness, or foggy thinking. And for anyone taking blood thinners, that same enzyme disruption could prevent proper clot control, increasing the risk of internal bleeding or making the medication less effective just when it's needed. That's what happened to Gerald Owens, a 7-8-year-old retired post office worker from Mississippi. Gerald had been faithfully taking his medications for years without issue. But a few months ago, he started adding fresh squeezed orange juice to his mornings. He liked the taste and thought it was a healthier choice than sweet tea. At first, there were no problems. But over time, he noticed he felt slightly woozy when standing up. Sometimes he forgot where he left things or lost track of what he was saying mid-sentence. His wife grew concerned when she noticed how pale he looked after a walk. Eventually, Gerald collapsed one morning while feeding the dog. At the hospital, his doctors found elevated levels of his medications in his blood, far above the expected range. Even though he hadn't changed a single dose, the citrus compounds in his orange juice had been quietly slowing his liver's ability to process those medications, allowing them to build up to toxic levels. The solution wasn't complicated. He didn't have to give up fruit altogether. But once he stopped the daily orange juice and spaced his medications away from citrus altogether, his balance returned and the brain fog lifted. For seniors managing high blood pressure, cholesterol, or heart rhythm issues, this isn't a rare story. Citrus interactions are well documented but often overlooked in day-to-day life. That's why I now recommend the same thing to all my older patients. skip the orange juice if you take medications that rely on the liver for processing, especially statins, calcium channel blockers, and anticoagulants. Choose water or herbal tea instead. If you enjoy citrus flavor, a light squeeze of lemon in your water is usually safe, but it's always worth asking your doctor first. At this stage in life, your body deserves predictability and support. Even small habits can change how your body handles medication. And citrus is one of the most common culprits. Now, if you thought that was surprising, the next fruit on our list may catch you even more off guard. Mangoes. Juicy, tropical, and deeply satisfying, but under the surface, they carry a sugar load and liver impact that could quietly affect both your blood sugar and your medication safety. Let's take a closer look. 6. Mango. Mango is one of the most sugar-dense fruits you'll find at the grocery store. A single cup of ripe mango can contain up to 45 grams of natural sugar. That's more than what you'd get from eating a glazed donut. But unlike a donut, mango feels healthy, safe, even beneficial. And that's where the trouble starts. In an older body, sugar doesn't move through the system like it once did. Insulin response slows. Blood vessels lose their flexibility. So, when a rush of sugar hits your bloodstream, it doesn't pass through cleanly. Instead, it creates tiny sparks of inflammation inside the arteries, particularly the delicate ones that feed the brain. Over time, that inflammation weakens the walls. Your body, in an attempt to protect itself, responds the only way it knows how. It sends clotting agents to patch the damage. But in a senior with narrowing arteries, even a small clot can block blood flow entirely. That's how strokes begin, not with fireworks, but with quiet daily habits that build up pressure over time. There's another layer, too. Mango isn't just sweet. It also contains a natural compound called mangiferin. On the surface, it sounds like just another plant nutrient. But deep in your body, mangiferin interacts with a key part of your liver's enzyme system, the cytochrome P450 pathway. This is the same system your body uses to metabolize many common medications, especially those for high blood pressure, cholesterol, or heart rhythm problems. When mangiferin slows that system down, medications that used to pass through safely now linger too long. They build up in your system quietly. There's no warning label, no clear symptom, just a slow shift until one morning your balance feels off, your vision blurs, or your pulse becomes irregular. That's exactly what happened to Mr. Lawrence Kane, an 83-year-old retired paramedic from New Mexico. In an effort to cut back on processed sugar, Lawrence started reaching for dried mango slices each afternoon. It felt like a smart swap, real fruit instead of sweets. What he didn't realize was that dried mango is far more concentrated than fresh, packing even more sugar into every bite. Lawrence was also on medication for atrial fibrillation and high blood pressure. After just a few weeks of this new routine, he began waking up feeling faint and off balance. One morning, while trying to stand, he fell, his speech slurred, and his wife called 911. Doctors diagnosed him with a mild ischemic stroke. Lab tests showed his medication levels were unusually high, even though he'd taken them correctly. The culprit wasn't the dose, it was the mango. His liver had slowed down just enough to let those drugs build up and tip his system off balance. That's why I tell my patients this. If you enjoy mango, that's okay, but keep it in moderation. Only eat a few small slices, and only during the daytime, ideally paired with a handful of almonds or a slice of cheese to help slow the sugar rush. Avoid mango before bed when your digestion is slowing down and your body needs stability, not stimulation. And if you're taking medications for the heart or blood pressure, always check in with your doctor before making mango a regular part of your diet. Because what feels like a sweet, tropical treat can quietly interfere with your body's most delicate systems, especially after 60. Now, as we wrap up this list of fruits to be cautious with, remember, this isn't about fear. It's about awareness. And the more you understand how your body changes with age, the better equipped you are to stay safe, strong, and independent. Now that we've explored these 6 fruits and how they may quietly affect the aging body, it's perfectly natural to feel a bit cautious. That's not a sign of fear, it's a sign of wisdom. Because recognizing small risks is how we take big steps to protect ourselves. As we age, even the healthiest routines deserve a second look. What once gave us energy and strength may now interfere with medications, raise blood sugar too quickly, or place subtle stress on the heart and brain. But this doesn't mean fruit needs to disappear from your table. It simply means learning to enjoy it in ways that match the needs of your changing body. Smaller servings, eaten earlier in the day, paired with a bit of protein or healthy fat to slow absorption and steady your system. And most importantly, eaten with awareness. Your brain and heart have supported you through a lifetime of experiences. Now it's your turn to support them with thoughtful choices, not restrictions. If this message helped shift how you see everyday fruit, give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to Health 365 and leave a comment with the word aware to show you're making mindful changes. You've come this far with experience, care, and courage. Now let's carry that same care into the next chapter. One bite, one meal, one choice at a time.